With the little thing first, bro.
Glad she was traffic.
Hurry up. Hurry up. Yeah, before I die.
He said I'm gonna get my up tonight. So when I shoot him for self-defense, then what? Because I'm licensed. So if I shoot him in my residency because he's sitting here putting his hands on me for the second time, then what?
That right there is Quanisha Johnson, standing outside her home, speaking to police officers about what she says is self-defense. She is calm, almost matter-of-fact, laying out the scenario. If she shoots him, then what? She's licensed, she's in her own home, and she says he's putting his hands on her. Keep that in your mind, because just minutes later, DeMonte Smith will stumble out of that same house, bleeding, telling officers,
With the little thing first, bro.
Glad she was traffic.
Hurry up. Hurry up. Yeah, before I die.
and the very next thing you need to see is Quanisha herself, in a courtroom, telling his family she never meant for any of it to happen. She says it was self-defense. She says she was protecting herself. But the same woman who asked officers what would happen if she shot him is the same woman who went inside, grabbed a tire iron and a gun, and struck and shot him. So which one is the real story? The calm self-defense claim, or the violent act that followed? We are going to get all the way into Quanisha's story and let you decide for yourself. DeMonte Smith was a 29-year-old rapper out of Atlanta who performed under the name It's Dolo. He wasn't famous yet, but he was hungry for it, dropping tracks on social media, chasing the dream of breaking through.
And my uncle was a dope fiend. Brought locked up for a whole don't get the money out the folks. Make a hole by 4 feet. Serving on a fiend, make a moldy. Better move around if you don't know me, nigga. Let me tell you a little something about me. We ain't had lights, you candles to see. Unload the top of the handle the beat. RP Rio, that's UCVG. We don't say names to you in the street. So mama feel pain to you in the street.
Behind the music, though, his life was complicated. He was in a relationship with a woman named Quanisha, a behavioral health technician, and together they shared a child. Their bond was close enough that she appeared in many of his videos, woven into the image he was building. But DeMonte wasn't just known for his music. Police records showed a different side of him. He had led officers on a long chase, not long before this incident, which ended in his arrest and jail time. When he got out, friends said he had nowhere to go. Quanisha, being the ever-loving girlfriend, opened her home to him, letting him stay with her and her 3 children. However, there was a side to DeMonte that is always tied to trouble, most especially domestic misconduct. On November 26, 2022, that tension came to a breaking point. Quanisha had spent the night partying with friends for a birthday, which she would later claim was the first time after giving birth 2 months ago that she was leaving the house. She had left her 3 children at home with DeMonte, the father of her youngest. He had expected her back home around 6 in the morning, but she didn't show. Her phone went unreachable. Worried, DeMonte started calling hospitals and jails, desperate to find her. However, before her phone had shut off, she had told him she was about to get into a fight. That detail only fueled his panic. When Quanisha finally turned her phone back on hours later, she was met with a flood of angry messages. DeMonte's texts weren't just upset, they were threatening. He warned her he would hit her when she got home. And from her later clam, this wasn't new. He had a history of chaos, of threatening women before. What started as arguments over phone calls and locations was quickly spiraling out of control. Alarmed, Quanisha called her family and his on a 4-way conference call. They urged her to return with a police escort. She listened. She dialed 911 and asked for officers to meet her at the house. Quanisha shared with officers that she has a firearm. Not only that, but that she is licensed to carry a firearm, and it was with her. She was asked to put the gun away in her car. Tragically, that same gun would be used to kill DeMonte. When the officer asked Quanisha what the problem was, this was her version of events.
We trying to figure out what we here now.
Cool, I'm grown. I'm doing what I'm doing. I ain't did nothing wrong. She toxic. Nigga, that ain't got nothing to do with me. Talk to her.
I got you. But when you saying you snap, what you mean you snap?
I snapped. I told her, bitch, stop playing with me. I'm like a goofy. I'm in here watching your kids and my kid, and you somewhere else with another nigga. You got off at 6.
There's nothing here that's his besides a trash bag full of clothes that he got from the DeKalb County Jail. You can take that and he can go. And he can put my daughter in the house if she get colic, because I'm going to have to deal with that.
Man, they're not touching my daughter, so shut your fucking mouth.
That's they don't touch my daughter. You can put my daughter in the house though.
Nah.
Your name not on the birth certificate, so therefore it's not your daughter.
Here's where it gets sus. At her initial 911 call, Quanisha had told the dispatcher that she had gone out clubbing, and now she's saying she's coming back from work. When DeMonte eventually opened the door and came out after several minutes of the officers knocking, he was holding the new baby in his arms. He immediately said Quanisha had gotten up and disappeared for over 3 hours. Immediately, DeMonte opened the door. The couple immediately started going back and forth arguing.
She got off her seat. She disappeared for 3 hours. Like I'm mad. I'm at home watching her kids and my kids. She disappeared for 3 hours.
She say anything? Did you say anything that would cause her to call?
What would you do if your girl go to work and then disappear with 3 hours and you at home with her kids and your kids? I'ma snap. I snap.
Please ask us for my baby back so she get college.
It's my baby
like,
too.
She's a newborn.
So drunk ass
Please
too.
ask him to put her back in the house.
Drunk out ass too.
Hold on, let's talk to him for a second.
Alright, she's 2 months though.
So
I
drunk
gotta
ass
deal with
on.
that. She gets
You
college.
30, still stripping.
I'm 30 and still stripping.
You mind?
30 and still broke.
You mind keep up baby on top?
Well, but it ain't gonna be long.
You
But
mind?
how long you gonna be stripping?
Stop arguing.
Fuck on.
Then it was who was going to take the baby. But Quanisha would add something questioning. She claimed the baby isn't DeMonte's, that his name isn't even on the birth certificate. Neither Quanisha nor DeMonte seemed ready to back down.
Your name not on the birth certificate,
Nah.
so therefore it's not your daughter. It's mine.
You ain't got no names on your birth certificate.
It is. I do. Let me go get it. Because at this point, it's kidnapping.
451, 41 of Injury, 20 westbound before the exit ramp.
Weird. That shit don't look good
on
Light
you.
shoulder, blue on the pilot, and the silver BMW.
Watch out, bro.
You might do that.
Watch
Hey,
out.
nah,
You hear my
please,
baby?
please.
I don't want my baby out here. The wind is blowing. She don't have a head on.
Just give her the baby.
No,
Just
Give
give-
me my baby.
The officers tried to calm them, but the shouting kept cutting through the air. Quanisha threw sharp words, telling DeMonte he'd never see their child again because he was broke.
Where your other kids?
With their mama.
With their mom? Hey, we don't talk to her.
We not here to listen to y'all go
Oh,
back and
okay.
forth.
No problem.
I'm trying to
I was
tell
in
you.
the
My
middle-
kids here though.
I
My
was in
kids
the
here
middle
though.
of
I
time.
see my kids every day.
It's
You
all
don't
right.
see none of yours.
That's
You ain't
cool.
gonna see her after this today.
For what? Cause you with that?
No.
You got mad 'cause you
You're a broke
disappeared?
ass nigga and I'm cool. That's why. Because you broke. And that's what you got on time.
You
I didn't know.
Hey, stop! Because at this point you're antagonizing. You stop.
I'm
Stop.
not. He has my
weird.
daughter out here.
You
Don't
ain't
let me
seen.
have my daughter out here.
Stop!
and
You're
she
not
has-
listening to nothing that's being said.
Every insult was another spark, and the tension inside that house was climbing towards something dangerous. Then Quanisha would say something that would echo through the rest of her case. In that moment, Quanisha wasn't just venting, she was testing the boundaries of the law itself. She told officers DeMonte had already put his hands on her for the second time, painting a picture of repeated abuse. And she reminded them that this was her home, her space, a place where Georgia's stand-your-ground laws could come into play. The law allows someone to use force, even deadly force, in self-defense without retreating, as long as they're in a place they have the legal right to be and reasonably believe they face imminent danger. Quanisha emphasized another detail. She was licensed to carry a firearm. To her, that license was more than paperwork. It was protection, a shield she believed gave her legal cover if she pulled the trigger. But then came the chilling question. Then what? I'm held accountable. That single line revealed everything. It showed she knew the stakes. She understood that even if she claimed self-defense, the law might still hold her responsible for the outcome.
He said I'm gonna get my ass up tonight. So when I shoot him for self-defense, then what? Because I'm licensed. So if I shoot him in my residency because he's sitting here putting his hands on me for the second time, then what?
And those words, spoken in front of officers, would echo through every stage of her case, a foreshadowing of the deadly confrontation that was about to unfold. Now, the officers found themselves trapped in a dilemma. Two people locked in a bitter fight, a baby caught in the middle, and no easy way to defuse it. They had to make a choice, step in harder or step back and hope the situation cooled on its own. What they decided next would become the turning point. The officers told them to cool down indoors, and they left. At the time, it seemed like the safest option. But in hindsight, that decision would be questioned again and again. Later, in court, prosecutors would stand firm on one point. The officers had been justified in leaving that day. From their perspective, what they saw wasn't an imminent threat. It was a couple locked in a heated argument, the kind of domestic quarrel that needed space to cool down rather than more police presence. But that decision, the choice to walk away, would become one of the most debated aspects of the case. Because once the officers stepped back, the situation inside that house didn't calm down, it escalated. And before long, one of them would end up dead at the hands of the other. The defense, however, told a very different story, one far more unsettling. They argued that the officers hadn't simply stepped back from a quarrel, they had abandoned a woman who was crying out for help. To them, Quanisha wasn't just combative or difficult, she was a domestic chaos victim waving red flags that no one wanted to see. They pointed to her multiple 911 calls, her repeated pleas for protection, and her documented fears of assault. She had even warned the officers about potential violence, even asked them outright what would happen if she had to shoot DeMonte in self-defense. And yet, despite those warnings, despite the clear signs of danger, the officers still left. In the defense's telling, that decision wasn't just a misjudgment, it was a failure that left Quanisha alone in a volatile situation, a failure that would end with blood on the floor. According to later court filings, instead of the couple de-escalating the argument inside the house, it kept boiling over. But what happened next depends entirely on which side of the courtroom you listen to. The prosecution painted Quanisha as calculated. They claimed she deliberately stepped outside, went to her car, and armed herself with not one but two weapons, a metal tire iron and her gun. Then, instead of retreating or waiting for help, she returned inside to confront DeMonte head-on. She struck Smith with a tire iron before pulling the trigger on him. To prosecutors, that sequence wasn't panic, it was preparation. The defense, of course, told a different story. They argued she only armed herself after the situation escalated further, terrified by what she believed was another assault in the making. To them, the weapons were a desperate shield, not a plan for attack. And then came the detail that prosecutors leaned on heavily, DeMonte's own dying words. As he lay wounded, he spoke to the officers, words the state pointed to as proof that Quanisha's actions weren't about self-defense at all, but about violence carried out with intent. Minutes after the officers left to their car, 30-year-old DeMonte Smith would stumble out of the home, saying Quanisha had hit him with an iron rod and then proceeded to shoot him in the chest.
With the little thing first, bro.
Glad you were traffic.
Hurry up, hurry up. Yeah, before I die.
He was immediately rushed to Emory-Hillendale Medical Center. However, he wouldn't make it out alive. Despite the team's desperate efforts, DeMonte's body couldn't recover. Not long after arriving at the hospital, he was pronounced dead. Quanisha was arrested on the scene and taken into custody. After her arrest, Quanisha Johnson faced several charges. Prosecutors accused her of causing a death during a confrontation, of engaging in a violent altercation within the household, of exposing her child to that incident, and of having a weapon during the conflict. Here is where it gets questionable, because in court, Quanisha testified that she was terrified of DeMonte, pointing to a severe physical altercation just weeks prior where she claimed he slammed her face down. She even shared text messages sent to DeMonte's mother at the time, pleading for someone to intervene because she didn't want things to go too far. Prior to the shooting, police had been called multiple times to the home. The officers often responded and temporarily separated them. However, according to the rapper's perspective captured on police body cam footage before the incident, he was basically telling the officers that she was out moving around all night, getting caught up in her own lies, and was straight up too scared to walk back through her own front door. She got mad cause she out creeping at night, and she couldn't keep up with her lies.
She got mad cause she out creeping at night and she couldn't keep up with her lies. And she was scared to come home. You smart? She ain't want to come home, so she used the police.
Shortly after law enforcement left was when things boiled over for the final time. According to Quanisha's own testimony later in court, as she came up the stairs, DeMonte allegedly lunged at her and threatened her. She felt she had no other choice to protect herself from physical harm, so she fired a shot that took his life. But just when the courtroom seemed to settle into one version of events, Quanisha's 7-year-old daughter was called to testify. In her first statement to forensic child interviewers, given immediately after the shooting, she described seeing her mother strike DeMonte with a pole before firing the gun. That account seemed to support the prosecution's version of events. Months later, though, her story changed. On the stand, she testified that it was DeMonte who had hit her mother, not the other way around. The shift was striking, and prosecutors seized on it. They suggested the young girl might have been coached. Her testimony had been reshaped to protect her mother.
When your mom came into the house that day, she asked you to call 911?
Yes.
She gave you her phone?
Yes.
And did you know that there were police already outside that day?
No.
Okay. Did she tell you why she wanted you to call 911?
Cause he was hitting her.
Okay. And was she scared that he was going to hit her?
I don't know.
Objection, personal knowledge. He asked if her mother.
Did she tell you why she wanted you to call 911?
Because he was hitting her.
Your mom went up the stairs?
Yes.
Okay. And you saw the man from Dolo, you saw him hit your mom?
Yes.
Could you see from where you were downstairs, could you see everything that was happening upstairs?
Not everything.
Okay. Could you see your mom?
For a second.
Could you see Dolo?
Yes.
And you said that you heard a gunshot?
Yes.
Did you actually see a gun? Did you see your mom pull a gun and shoot?
I didn't see her pull a gun.
You just heard the gunshot?
Yes.
For the jury, this became a pivotal moment. Was the child's memory unreliable, blurred by trauma and time, or had her account been deliberately altered to tilt the case in Quanisha's favor? But then the case took a dramatic turn when DeMonte's ex-girlfriend took the stand. She told jurors that DeMonte had asked her to order him an Uber from Quanisha's house. Phone records backed her claims up. The rideshare was already on its way when the shooting happened. This was a sign that DeMonte wasn't planning to fight, but to leave. He had even asked for an Uber. To prosecutors, that detail mattered. It suggested he was trying to walk away from the chaos, not escalate it. But the defense quickly countered with a different angle. After the ex-girlfriend's glowing testimony about DeMonte's character, they pulled back the curtain on another side of his life. The jury heard about his criminal record, not just minor run-ins, but serious charges. 4 months before his death, in July 2022, he had been arrested for possession of a firearm during the commission of a felony and possession of a popular illegal substance with intent to distribute. And it didn't stop there. At the time of that arrest, the Monroe County Sheriff's Office had active warrants for him, stalking and probation violation. Those revelations painted a far more complicated picture of DeMonte Smith, one that clashed sharply with the image of a man simply trying to leave a volatile situation. The defense leaned heavily on DeMonte's history of violence, arguing it explained why Quanisha felt threatened that night. But the other side of this story is heartbreaking. DeMonte's mother, Bernetta Campbell, took the stand to give a powerful victim impact statement that left very few dry eyes in the room. Her voice carried the weight of grief, and every word seemed to pierce through the silence of the courtroom. She painted a completely different picture of her son, describing him as a loving father, a helpful community member, and a man who was deeply in love, even if the relationship was toxic.
Who was he to you? He loved your children. He loved you. I heard the comments that you had made to him. I heard comments that was over and over again how he wasn't nothing, he was broke, you don't have this and you're not that. I remember him calling me, it was your birthday, and he was so sad that he didn't have any money in his pocket to do something for you. I cashed out him $100. He said, thank you, mama. He said, I love this girl. She a hustler, she grinds. He said, and everything on her body was real. I laughed. I said, boy, focus on what's important. Focus on how you are being treated by that person. But there was nothing I could say to him. He was head over heels in love with Quanisha Johnson.
Bernetta argued that painting her son solely as a monster ignored the pain left behind for his children, who now have to grow up without their father. Her testimony reminded everyone that beyond the legal arguments and evidence, there was a family shattered, children robbed of a parent, and a mother mourning a son she believed was more than his mistakes. She expressed zero empathy for Quanisha Johnson, saying she did not just take her son's life, but she took a human's life from the face of the earth. To Bernetta, this wasn't about courtroom strategies or legal doctrines. It was about the irreversible loss of a man she loved, a son whose absence would echo through birthdays, holidays, and milestones his children would face without him. Her words left the jury and spectators with a haunting reminder. While the defense sought to justify Quanisha's actions, the victim's family carried the unbearable weight of a life cut short. On August 28, 2023, after all that testimony and all the evidence, the jury reached their verdict. They acquitted Quanisha of malice murder, which means they didn't believe she planned to kill him, but they found her guilty of voluntary manslaughter and the remaining charges. The courtroom was tense. There was relief for some and disbelief for others. It was a verdict that acknowledged the chaos of that night without labeling it as cold-blooded murder. Now, here's where Judge Shauna Morris did something absolutely unprecedented. Instead of the prosecution's requested 25-year sentence, she gave Quanisha a structured 20-year term. This wasn't just a lighter sentence, it was a carefully layered punishment that balanced incarceration with monitored freedom. 5 years in state prison, followed by 5 years of home confinement, and then 10 years of probation. But the most shocking part, Judge Morris granted Quanisha an appeal bond, something that rarely happens in manslaughter cases. That decision sent ripples through the legal community. Appeal bonds in such cases are almost unheard of, and it signaled the judge saw something unusual in the circumstances. This meant she could stay under house arrest while appealing her conviction, instead of going straight to prison. For Quanisha, it was a lifeline, a chance to fight her case from home rather than behind bars. For prosecutors, it was a bitter pill, raising questions about whether justice was truly being served. When granting this, Judge Morris specifically cited that Quanisha had called the alarm company and local law enforcement not once, not twice, but 3 times before the fatal confrontation. To the judge, those calls mattered. They showed a woman who had tried to involve authorities, who had sought help before violence erupted. And in that detail, Judge Morris found enough reason to justify leniency, decision that would remain controversial long after the gavel fell. Quanisha Johnson's story leaves us with a haunting contradiction. Was she a woman defending herself inside her own home, or a woman preparing to justify an act she had already decided to commit? That question of self-defense versus intent is what made her case so complex. But just when you think you've seen the limits of how tangled these stories can get, another case emerges, one that doesn't hinge on self-defense at all, but on something far more chilling. Because while Quanisha stood outside her home asking police what would happen if she pulled the trigger, Willana Bibs never had the chance to ask anyone anything. She was a 20-year-old aspiring singer, full of promise. And in her case, the man she trusted, an industry insider with platinum records to his name, would be the one to end her life. Willana Bibs was born in Fayetteville, North Carolina, on September 11, 2000. She grew up in a home where she was loved, and she knew it. Her mother, Cassandra Bibs, was the kind of mother whose presence, because her love was not conditional. And so her disappointment was not something you wanted to sit with either. By the time Willana was in her late teens, Fayetteville had given her everything it had to give, and she was ready for more. She set her eyes on Atlanta, Georgia. She moved there to become a singer. And she did not do it the way some people do, dreaming from a couch and waiting for a break that never comes. She went at it like someone who understood that the dream cost something and she was willing to pay. She launched Lashed by Willie, her own mink lash business. She launched a clothing line. She worked multiple jobs, multiple streams, all of it running simultaneously, because she was not the kind of young woman who put one egg in one basket and hoped for the best. She was building something at 20 years old. It was here she crossed paths with a woman named Anne. Anne was in a particular kind of pain when Willana met her, the kind that comes from years of being in a situation that has broken you down to something you do not recognize as yourself. The kind that makes you cling to anyone who shows up with kindness, because kindness has become so scarce it feels like oxygen. Willana showed up with kindness. Anne had a daughter named Jayla, who was turning 2 years old, and she needed someone to do Jayla's hair. She reached out to Willana. It was the beginning of a bond that would carry weight in ways neither of them could have imagined at the time. That was the day Willana met Jayla's father for the first time, a man named Justin Wright. Justin Lamont Wright was 31 years old when Willana met him, 11 years older than her. He went by Jay Wright in professional circles and had built a name for himself in the Atlanta music industry as a songwriter and producer. He wasn't just another aspiring artist. He had already carved out a reputation. He founded Camp Entertainment Worldwide in 2011 and has worked with artists that included Bow Wow, Timbaland, Cash Doll, and DJ Khaled. He knew people. He could make introductions. He could open doors to someone who had moved to Atlanta specifically to break into music. He also had a mentor. That mentor was R. Kelly. If you have to pause on that sentence, do let it sit there and be exactly as alarming as it is. Because mentorship in the music industry can shape careers. But in this case, it also carried shadows. But here's the thing about Justin Wright that makes this story different from so many others. He was not hiding who he was. He was not pretending to be safe. He was not performing the role of a good man while privately being something else entirely. He sat down in a public interview with a woman named Mo Clark for her show, and he said the words himself out loud on camera with no apparent concern for what any woman in his life might do with that information. He said he had been arrested for 26 violent felonies.
It's all very, very true.
So Jay Wright, tell the people, because the people want to know. When I say people, I mostly mean me, because I'm here in person right now. What the hell you had went?
Listen, if you really know the background of who Jay Wright is, I'm really a criminal trying not to be one. I'm so honest about it. Like, I've been arrested for 26 violent felonies.
Oh my God.
All violent.
Who are you fighting?
Everyone. I love to fight. It's my favorite thing to do. That is my problem. And I'm one of those people that really stand.
You are not a true light-skinned person, because they don't be trying to get dirty and fight.
The audacity of that admission, casual, unflinching, almost boastful, revealed the kind of man Willana was stepping into the orbit of. For a young woman chasing dreams in Atlanta's music scene, the allure of his connections was real, but so was the danger. He said they were all violent. He said fighting was his favorite thing to do. He said he was the kind of person who stood for things, and that standing for things meant doing all bad things. His exact words, all bad things on accident. He said it like it was a personality trait he was proud of, like it was something that made him interesting. And Anne had known the truth of what those words meant in practice. She had lived it. She had shared publicly what it looked like to actually be inside Justin Wright's world. The control, the manipulation, the violence that left her in a neck brace. The abuse that she said permanently damaged her vocal cords. The moment she finally found her window to run, she ran. No clothes, nothing, just her body moving out of that apartment and toward any form of help she could reach. She had survived him, but survival came at a cost. Anne's testimony wasn't just about bruises or broken bones. It was about the way Justin Wright hollowed out her sense of self, the way he turned love into fear, and the way escaping him felt less like freedom and more like crawling out of a fire. For Willana, meeting him meant stepping into the orbit of a man who didn't hide his darkness, who spoke it aloud as if it were a badge of honor. And for Anne, it meant watching another young woman walk into the same storm she had barely escaped. The week before Mother's Day 2021, Justin, Willana, and his daughter Jayla drove up from Atlanta to Davenport, Iowa. The drive from Atlanta to Davenport is approximately 13 hours. Justin had family in Davenport. His mother lived there. The trip was originally for a birthday party for one of his relatives. Willana's mother, Cassandra, had purchased a plane ticket for her daughter to come home for Mother's Day weekend. She had done it specifically, intentionally, as a mother who wanted her daughter with her on the day meant to celebrate exactly that bond. But then Justin's mother called Willana, and she convinced her to stay in Iowa instead. Think about what it means for a 20-year-old woman to choose a boyfriend's mother's request over a plane ticket her own mother had purchased to bring her home for Mother's Day. It means she was already somewhere deep in the architecture of that relationship, a place where other people's needs had started to feel more urgent than her own, where the people around him had already begun to shape her choices in ways she may not have fully recognized yet. She stayed in Davenport. The birthday party came and went. Mother's Day weekend arrived at 153 Calvin Street. Inside the house where Justin's mother lived, something was already wrong. Willana knew it. She picked up her phone and she called her mother. Cassandra was at work. She called 4 more times in a row, and then she sent a text wishing her mother a happy Mother's Day.
Say, hey Ma, happy Mother's Day. I love you and appreciate you for everything you do. Love, Bud, call me. And she told me to call her.
But then added that she calls her back. Cassandra was at work and missed every call. By the time her break came and she looked at her phone and saw what was waiting for her and felt what a mother feels when she sees that and called her daughter back, Willana could not answer because Willana was already gone. At approximately 1:25 in the afternoon on May 9th, 2021, Davenport police responded to a disturbance call at 153 Calvin Street. Officers arrived and found Willana Bibs. She had been shot. She was pronounced deceased at the scene. Her phone was still in that house. And the argument that caused all of it, the argument that Justin Wright decided required a gun as his response, was about $70. $70. Justin Wright was taken into custody that same day. He was booked into Scott County Jail. His bond was set at $500,000. He pleaded not guilty. And then, while sitting in that jail cell across from a detective for what became hours of interrogation, Justin Wright said a great many things. He talked about his family. He talked about PTSD.
I've been telling her, like, my PTSD is bad. I need to go back home.
He talked about the relatives in the ICU. He talked about the birthday party he had missed.
So we went there, but I was late because
I think it's called helium.
Maybe, yeah. So I missed that.
Okay.
I completely missed their party, so I got there when they were leaving, like walking out.
He talked about his complicated relationship with his mother. He talked about Anne and what he said she had done to him. He talked about everything. What he did not do in all of those hours, across all of those words, was grieve Willana. The detective asked him who Willana Bibs was. He said, "Wana is a girl that was Anne's friend that I was messing with for a second." That was how he described her. Not as a young woman whose life had just been taken, not as someone whose mother was waiting for her call, not as someone who had dreams. To him, she was a girl he messed with for a second. He went on to say, she had sent him money, $1,200 through Apple Pay, money he claimed she owed him. He described meeting her through Anne, admitted to a threesome, and dismissed her as someone he hadn't known long. He called her Willie. He said his mother liked her. He said they still talked sometimes. He said she had been involved in crazy stuff with Anne. He told the detective he had been loading his car to go home when officers arrived. He said he was already in the middle of putting his things in the car when they came up. He said he had his computer on the stairs, the only thing he was missing, just getting ready to leave.
I was leaving real fast, so I was just gonna grab some bags, and my computer was already sitting, like my tower that I was taking with me was already sitting at the top of the stairs. I had put that there like a day before, so I literally was just gonna grab some trash bags, then put everything in the trash and put it in her garbage can right there, then grab my computer and my daughter.
He never once mentioned that a 20-year-old woman was dead inside his mother's house. He talked for hours. He never cried for her. He never said her name with anything that resembled loss. Instead, he framed himself as someone exhausted, overwhelmed, misunderstood, and surrounded by people conspiring against him. He talked about Anne. He talked about his mother. He talked about the people in his life who had wronged him, failed him, and lied on him. And then the detective asked where he was when he last talked to Willana. He said he was sitting on the couch. And then he said, "I'm sorry. The room is spinning for me right now. I'm hearing so many voices in my head. I'm trying my hardest to answer all your questions." The room was spinning, voices in his head, while Willana's mother was somewhere finding out that her daughter had called her 4 times, and she had missed every single one. This is a man who had 26 violent felony arrests and said fighting was his favorite thing to do, bragged about it in a recorded interview that anyone in his life could have found. This is who Jay Wright is. He said it with pride, as if violence was a badge of honor. He even joked about being light-skinned with dark-skin tendencies, claiming he stood apart from anyone who looked like him because he did all bad things on accident. And then he shifted again, insisting it was all about loyalty.
It's because I stand for things though, so.
Okay, I can see that.
I'm gonna protect my family and my friends at all costs, no matter what that means for me.
Yeah.
And I really stand by that, so if I gotta go to jail behind that, die behind that, I'm a man and I really stand on that. So if I gotta sit down for a little while because of it, I'm gonna sit down because of it. But I have great lawyers. Shout out to Mike Jacobs, even though he's not doing the greatest job right now. That's Dirk lawyer, that's Vaughn lawyer that got them out of the shooting at Varsity, the alleged, I should say. Yeah, so he got them out of that situation. He got me out on bond. So, you know, I can't be too sad. He's very expensive, but you know, we keep good lawyers. I'm not a felon. I've been arrested for 26 felonies, but I'm not a felon.
And that's good. That is good news. In case y'all don't, he wins. He wins. He has a winning team for the people that didn't understand what he said.
All we do is win.
He's a winner. Okay, so you sat down for a little while.
Oh yeah.
Now let me tell you.
But even in that declaration, the focus was on himself, his image, his reputation, his lawyers. He bragged about keeping good lawyers, name-dropping Mike Jacobs, the attorney known for representing rappers like Lil Durk and King Von. Hours of talking, hours of spinning narratives, hours of centering himself, and through it all, not once did he grieve Willana Bibs, the young woman whose life had ended inside his mother's house. This is a man Anne introduced Willana to. And what came out after Willana's death, in recordings, in social media posts, in accounts that surfaced piece by piece, was that the world she had stepped into was far more complicated and far more dangerous than it looked at first glance. Anne herself had described the grip Justin held over her life. Years of control, abuse, and isolation. She even revealed that the plan to bring Willana into his orbit was tied to her own desperate attempt to regain custody of her daughter, Jayla. In Anne's words, Willana's role was to help smooth things over, to get Justin comfortable so Anne could get her child back. But in doing so, Willana ended up in the middle of something she may not have fully understood until it was too late. Inside that apartment, Willana saw things that terrified her. Anne later recalled a moment that has never left her memory. Willana looked at her and said, "We have got to get out of here, or we are going to die." At just 20 years old, she had seen the situation clearly enough to name it. She knew, and she was trying to find a way out. 3 days after Mother's Day, on May 12th, her community gathered for a balloon release in her honor. They organized an awareness march in her name. Cassandra has continued to honor her daughter. On what would have been Willana's 22nd birthday, September 11th, 2022, she organized a celebration of her life at Briar Creek Shopping Center in North Carolina. She refused to let her daughter's birthday pass quietly. She refused to let her daughter become a statistic. Almost 2 years after that Mother's Day, Justin Lamont Wright's trial began in Scott County District Court. On 10th of April, 2023, a jury found him guilty of first-degree homicide. On June 14, 2023, he was sentenced to life in prison without parole. He filed an appeal, but the Iowa Court of Appeal dismissed it in January 2025. He is where he belongs. But courtroom justice is not the same as full justice, because Cassandra still missed those calls. Because the text that said, "Love, bug, call me," will never be answered. Because Justin Wright sat in a public interview a month before killing Juana and told the world exactly who he was, and no one acted on it. We live in a world where we Google people before first dates, where we search names before we trust them with our time. The information that could have changed Juana's trajectory was sitting online. We have to stop excusing red flags because we like the way someone makes us feel. We have to believe people when they tell us who they are, especially when they brag about it. Just when it felt like the story couldn't get heavier, another cry cut through. This time during a Fox News interview. Kaya, the mother of 28-year-old rapper Crystal Jordan, described the sheer horror of pressing her hands against her daughter's leg alongside her granddaughter, desperately trying to hold Crystal's life inside her body. Her words broke hearts everywhere.
We put pressure on it, we trying to stop my baby from bleeding. She took out my daughter from us, she took my baby, she broke my bone.
That moment showed a kind of loss no courtroom transcript or police report could ever capture. It was raw, it was human, and it was devastating. This is the story of what unfolded that night on Batshave Lane. The heartbreaking reality of what happened to Crystal Jordan, a 28-year-old Houston rapper who performed under the name Judy World. What should have been nothing more than a routine errand ended in tragedy on a dark Houston street, leaving behind a grieving family, a community desperate for answers, and a 10-year-old child forced to witness the unimaginable. It began on a Saturday evening. Crystal was on a 3-way jail call with her boyfriend, who needed some quick cash. Wanting to help, she got into her car to pick it up from his place. She didn't go alone. She brought the 2 people closest to her mother, Kaya, and her 10-year-old daughter. What Crystal didn't know was that her boyfriend's sister, Kayla Wanatha Rogers, would be there, and between the 2 women, tension had already been simmering. The feud wasn't hidden. It had spilled into the digital world. Crystal had posted a confrontational video online aimed directly at Rogers. The animosity was real, but nothing could have prepared Crystal for what was waiting for her that night. The errand that began with loyalty and love, helping her boyfriend, bringing her family along, turned into a collision of old grudges, online hostility, and real-world violence. And in the middle of it all was Crystal, a rising artist, a devoted mother, and a daughter who never imagined that one ordinary evening would end in heartbreak. The confrontation that followed wasn't just about online words. It was years of tension, pride, and anger colliding in one tragic moment. And caught in the middle was Crystal, a young mother, a rising artist, a woman trying to balance loyalty to her loved ones with the ambitions she carried for herself. When Crystal pulled up to the 900 block of Batshave Lane, Kayla Juanitha Rogers didn't come outside to talk. She came out holding a butcher knife. Witnesses say she declared, "I don't want this girl over here. I'm going to end her." In a moment that showed both innocence and courage, Crystal's 10-year-old daughter tried to stop the attack. She threw herself in front of the car door, desperate to protect her mother. But Rogers maneuvered around the child, stepped between Crystal and her mother, and drove the knife straight into Crystal's leg. The blade struck an artery. As paramedics were called, Rogers allegedly refused to cooperate, saying out loud that she wanted Crystal to die. Crystal was rushed to the hospital, but she never made it home. Following the attack, Kayla Rogers was arrested and charged with manslaughter. And that is where this story ignited outrage. Outrage that a rising artist, a mother, a daughter, could be taken so violently, in front of her family, over a feud that should never have escalated to bloodshed. This wasn't just another headline. It was a devastating reminder of how quickly tension can turn fatal, how fragile life is when anger is allowed to boil over, and how the people left behind, a mother, a child, a community, are forced to carry the weight of a loss that can never be undone. Crystal's sibling stepped forward in an interview and voiced what so many people were already thinking. How can this possibly be manslaughter when it looks and sounds like premeditation?
Sister, because she wasn't irresponsible. When I got there, she was gone. And I just seen the blood. And for it to be charged with man, it's kind of crazy. She should be charged with murder.
When someone chases you down as you're trying to leave, armed with a weapon, declaring their intent to kill, that isn't an accident. That's intent. Crystal Jordan's life was cut short at just 28 years old. But for her family, the fight for accountability has only just begun. They are demanding that the charge be elevated to murder and pushing for a sentence of life without parole. Kaya, Crystal's mother, put it in the most heartbreaking terms. She said the attacker will eventually get out of prison and see her child again, but she will never get to hug her daughter again. That contrast between the possibility of freedom for the attacker and the permanence of Crystal's absence is what fuels the family's outrage. This isn't just about legal definitions. It's about justice that feels real. To Crystal's loved ones, manslaughter doesn't capture the deliberate nature of what happened on Batshave Lane. It doesn't capture the fact that Crystal's 10-year-old daughter had to throw herself in front of a car door to try to protect her mother. It doesn't capture the words allegedly spoken before the knife was used, "I'm going to end her." For the family, the demand is simple but profound. Call this what it is. Call it murder. And make sure the punishment reflects the gravity of the act. Crystal's sibling stepped forward in the interview to voice what everyone is thinking. How can it possibly be manslaughter when it was allegedly premeditated? When someone chases you down as you're trying to leave, armed with a weapon, declaring their intent to kill, that isn't an accident. Declaring their intent to kill, that isn't an accident. Crystal Jordan's life was cut short at just 28 years old, but her family's fight for real accountability has only just begun. The family is demanding a charge of murder and pushing for life without parole. As Kaya put it, the attacker will eventually get out of prison and see her child again, but Kaya will never get to hug her daughter again. During her remembrance, her mother said she wants her to be remembered for love, respect, and peace. "I want everybody to keep loving my daughter. Don't forget about her. After today, or after the funeral, after she laid to rest, don't forget about her. Keep her legacy going." Each of these women's story is a reminder that violence doesn't just take one person, it ripples outward, breaking mothers, children, siblings, and entire communities. Justice in courtrooms may deliver verdicts, but it never fills the silence left behind. So here's what I want you to sit with. When love, ambition, and forgiveness are the very qualities that made these women vulnerable, how do we as a society protect those same qualities without letting them be exploited?